Exodus chapter 23, verse 20. Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. I want to give our praises and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahawashi, Bahashem, Rakah, Kodash, forgive me the spirit, to do this video. In this lesson, I'm going into Yahawashi in the wilderness. Okay, part 2. Yahawashi in the wilderness. Okay, which is a follow-up of my last lesson of Yahawashi being in the cloud in the split sea. Okay, so if you watched that, then you would have heard me say that Yahawashi followed them also into the wilderness. Okay, and that's that angel that Yahweh sent before them. Okay, to watch them. All right, to watch their conduct. All right, to see if they were thankful, if they were grateful, if they was in the spirit, if they trusted, if they feared, all those things, man, that we supposed to be doing. All right, Yahawashi was watching that, and he's watching us. Okay, let's go back to Exodus chapter 23. I left off at verse 21. I read verse 22. It says, but if thou shalt indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy unto thy enemies and an adversary unto thine adversaries. Right. Okay, you will have complete protection from the heavens. Okay, so it's very, very serious to be obedient to Yahweh Bashem Yahawashi. Okay, and fervent about it, man. We got to be more fervent amongst each other about it. Let's go to Psalms chapter 78. I love this chapter because it goes into the wilderness. And really, through the spirit, I'm going to go back to the story in general and just read through it. Okay, but Psalm 78 covers different things about the wilderness. Let's go to Psalms chapter 78. Let's start at verse 10. It says, they kept not the covenant of Yahweh and refused to walk in his law and forgot his works and his wonders that he did show them. Marvelous things did he in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt in the field of Zoan. Right, and that field is talking about Pharaoh, his army, his people, where all the plagues, okay, took place. Okay, all the plagues we read about. That's what that's talking about. Verse 13, he divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and he made the waters to stand as a heap. Right. Okay, and when it says he divided the sea and caused them to pass through, our fathers, okay, which I read in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, okay, in the last lesson, okay, our fathers went under the cloud. So who was in the cloud? Yahawashi. Okay, Yahawashi was in the cloud. He sent that angel, okay, the top angel. All right, verse 14. In the daytime also he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. Right, that pillar. Okay, he clave the rocks in the wilderness and gave them drink as out of the great depths. He brought streams also out of the rock and caused waters to run down like rivers. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. Right, and Yahawashi was there to witness it. Okay, he sent Yahawashi to witness it, man. Okay, so Yahweh was seeing everything through Yahawashi, who he sent in the wilderness, in the split sea. Okay, it's very important to understand that Yahawashi was there, okay, in the split sea and in the wilderness, okay, because when you really think about it, you have to go back to see what we did wrong during that time, okay, period. So once you understand that Yahawashi was there and that he's watching us now to come to deliver us in this captivity, from this captivity, okay, it brings it all together, full circle of an understanding. Okay, so you're supposed to go back to study. These things are written for our learning so that you don't do the same mistakes. You don't lack trust. You don't lack fear. Okay, things the Lord do for you, you're grateful. You're thankful. Okay, you're giving thanks day in and day out. All right, every day. Okay, that's the spirit we're supposed to be in, and we're supposed to learn from that, because when you read about the wilderness, man, they were getting jacked up, man, for their behavior. Okay, so let's go back. Verse 17. It says, and they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness, and they tempted Yahweh in their hearts by asking meat for their lusts. Yeah, they spoke against Yahweh by Yahawashi. They said, can Yahweh furnish a table in the wilderness? Right, talking shit, man. Totally ridiculous. He just saved them. He just drowned the army. Okay, they saw the army soldiers from the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Okay, he drowned them out, man. Split the sea. Before that, all the plagues. You can't forget that. So how the hell are you going to get to the wilderness and say, can he feed us? Are you out your damn mind? Do you see the disrespect that Yahawashi was witnessing? All right. Remember, when I read 1 Corinthians chapter 10, it was Yahawashi that sent the serpents on him. Yahawashi did that, man. Now, the Father did it through him, but Yahawashi did it. Okay. Back at verse 19. Yeah, they spoke against Yahweh. They said, can Yahweh furnish a table in the wilderness? Behold, he smote the rock that the waters gushed out and the streams overflowed. Can he give us bread also? Right. It was one thing after another. We can't act like that. Okay. Or you're going to get left behind, man. That's the truth. These things are written so that you don't act like this, so that you're not left behind and you don't die and you don't get judged. You understand? That's why it's written. Okay. Can he give bread also? Right. Trying to doubt his power. Very disrespectful, man. Can he provide flesh for his people? Therefore, the Lord heard this. Oh, boy. Therefore, the Lord heard this and was wroth. So a fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Israel. Right. Remember, Yahawashi is sent, right, to watch over all of this madness. Okay. Think about that. All right. So, boy. Verse 22. Because they believed not in Yahweh and trusted not in his salvation, even though he did save them. Okay. But they still didn't trust him after the fact. Okay. Which is a horrible mind frame. That is a horrible spirit, man. Okay. So you see clearly why the Lord ain't putting up with that shit. Okay. He's not. That's why many are called, few are chosen. Why is that? Okay. Many are called, few are chosen. There's a reason why. We understand because they weren't chosen, okay, before the world began. Okay. But it still had to play out of why. You see? Verse 23. Though he had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven and had rained down manna upon them to eat and had given them of the corn of heaven, man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to be full. He caused the east wind to blow in the heaven, and by his power he brought in the south wind. He rained flesh also upon them as dust, and feathered fowls like as the sand of the sea. Man, plenty of food they was getting, man. They was getting fed big time. That's what that's talking about. You talking about the sand of the sea? That's a lot of food, man. Okay, a lot of food. But even then they was talking shit. Okay, they were eating while talking shit. That's how disrespectful Jake was in the wilderness, man. They were eating, smacking, while talking shit. Okay? Verse 28. And he let it fall in the midst of their camp round about their habitations. So they did eat and were filled, for he gave them their own desire. Right. Okay, he gave them what they wanted, even though they was talking shit. Okay? They were not estranged from their lust, but while their meat was yet in their mouths, the wrath of Yahweh by Yahawashi came upon them. Right. And slew the fattest of them and smote down the chosen man of Israel. Right. And I think it was like 23,000. Okay. Of chosen men. Think about that. Okay. Man. All right. Chosen man. Meaning man that Israel looked up to. He struck him down. Okay. Before them all, man. Okay. Now, why did he do that? So that they fear. See, they did not fear. They didn't have no reverence, no respect, no fear. That's why they went in circles for 40 years. And Yahawashi was making them do it. Okay. Yahweh did it through Yahawashi. I'm going to keep pushing that because it's the truth. Verse 32, for all this they sinned still and believed not for his wondrous works. They still was sinning. They still didn't believe. They still didn't trust. They still didn't have faith. To not have faith is sin, according to the scriptures. That is sin. All right? Because it is impossible to please Yahawashi without that faith. You can read that in Hebrews. Okay? Verse 33. Therefore their days did he consume in vanity, and their years in trouble, when he slew them, when they sought him, and they returned and inquired early after Yahweh. And they remembered that Yahweh was their rock, and the high God, their Redeemer. Right, Yahweh Bashim Havashai. Okay, and it also, I can go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. It talks about Yahawashi being that rock. You see? So he sent his son to be that rock. Okay? Matter of fact, I'm going to go to John chapter 10, verse 32 and read this precept. It says, Yahawashi answered them, many good works have I showed you from my Father. For which of those works do you stone me? Right. Okay, so the works that Yahawashi was doing, the Father was doing it in Yahawashi. Okay, that's what Yahawashi is talking about. I'm going to read it again. Yahawashi answered them, many good works have I showed you from my Father. So that power to do those things came from the Father. Okay, now let's go to 1 Corinthians. Okay, let's read chapter 10, verse 4. It says, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Yahawashi. There you go. Okay, so the rock is Yahweh Bashim Yahawashi. Okay, Yahweh sent Yahawashi to be that rock in the split sea and to be that rock, okay, in the wilderness. Okay, he was doing the works through Yahawashi during that time. There you go. Okay, let's go back. Psalm 78. Let's go back to verse 35. It says, and they remembered that Yahweh Bashim Yahawashi was their rock. You see that? That's that connection right there. And the high God, the Redeemer. Verse 36. Nevertheless, they did flatter him with their mouth, and they lied unto him with their tongue. Right. Lip service. Okay, a whole bunch of lip service. For their heart was not right with him, with Yahweh Bashim Yahawashi, neither were they steadfast in his covenant. Right, all that fake shit, man. They was eating, being fake, talking shit. Okay, lip service, lip service, lip service, and it did not work for them. They went in circles, man, because of lip service. Okay, that fake shit didn't work then, and that fake shit ain't gonna work now. Remember that. These things are written for our learning. Okay? All right, so that we don't act like that. Verse 38. But he, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity and destroyed them not. Yeah, many a time turned he his anger away and did not stir up all his anger. Right, all his wrath. Right. Okay, so when you read about all the judgments that was going on in the wilderness, it wasn't just happening quickly, right away. He still was feeding them. He was winking at their wickedness. Okay, giving them chances, giving them grace to repent. He was giving them room to repent, man. Okay, before judgments and serpents and, all kinds of judgments was happening. All right. So Yahweh Bashim Yahawashi was being merciful to Jake, and they still didn't have respect. They still didn't want to trust. They still didn't want to get right. And that's why they went in circles. When you think about 40 years, okay, 40, okay, most of y'all listen to this lesson ain't 40. So when you think about 40 years, that's why. You think that's harsh? That's why they were being harsh. Okay, very, very disrespectful, man. Let's go to verse 39. It says, for he remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passed away and cometh not again. How often did they provoke him in the wilderness and grieved him in the desert? Yeah, they turned back and tempted Yahweh and limited the Holy One of Israel. Right, they tempted Yahweh Bashim Yahawashi. Okay, they tempted Yahawashi. Let's go back to 1 Corinthians. Okay, chapter 10, verse 4. Matter of fact, let's go to verse 9. It says, neither let us tempt Yahawashi, as some of them also tempted and were destroyed of the serpents. Right, that angel Yahweh sent was Yahawashi. Okay, so it says here, neither let us tempt Yahawashi. Let's go back to Psalm 78, verse 41. Yeah, they turned back and tempted Yahweh Bashimawashai and limited the Holy One of Israel. Right. Okay, starting with Yahweh, then Yahawashi. Okay, the Holy One of Israel. They tempted. Disrespectful, man. Okay, that's why you got to go back and read that story so you can really get into it, man. You be like, whoa, and you'll learn from it. Okay, you start, you might see some things of yourself in there. You'd be like, oh, man, oh, hell no. Let me change this right now. Because you know you ain't getting saved if you don't change it. You see? It's supposed to promote fear in the Lord, right? Verse 42, they remembered not his hand, nor the day when he delivered them from the enemy. They forgot that quick, man. That is disrespectful, man. Verse 43, how he had wrought his signs in Egypt, and his wonders in the field of Zoan. Right. Okay, in Egypt, all those plagues. Okay, all those plagues. Okay, matter of fact, verse 44 shows that. And had turned the rivers into blood and the floods that they could not drink. Right. Okay, all that happened in Zoan, in the place of the Egyptians. Okay, where all the plagues took place. All right. So with that, I hope you're edified. I will go back and read again that story. Okay, and really get into it so that everything can come full circle, that understanding, okay, so that you can get prepared for this salvation and do the right things, okay, and do the right things. All right, so with that, I want to give our praises and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahawashi, Bahashem, Rakah, Kodash, forgive me, Spirit, to do this lesson. Double honors to the elders of Great Millstone, and Shalom to you, Akamah, that is doing the truth in all sincerity. Shalom.